The deepest position on this Broncos roster, wide receivers. We're taking a look today and talking all things Courtland Sutton. Hello, welcome into the studio. I am Phil Milani alongside Sidney Jones, the Hall of Famer, Steve Atwater, and Eric Delilah next to him there. Guys, we're talking about the wide receiver position. A lot of rumors this offseason about, hey, maybe they're going to move a piece here or there. Certainly one of the names that was circling around there, Steve, Courtland Sutton. Heard him talk last week about it. What do you think about how he addressed that?
Yeah, I thought he handled it really well, because I would imagine after hearing that, after being here with the team for 4 years now, that they may have hurt him a little bit to say, man, these guys, they're thinking about trading me, or other teams, I may be somewhere else next year. But I thought he handled it well, and looking at it from the positive side, saying, hey, a lot of teams were interested in me, so hey, that shows that I have some value. And that's a good thing. And we know that Courtland didn't really have the year that he wanted to have last year. I think he didn't have the explosion that he had his first couple of years, but I'm looking for this in his third year after the surgery to really come back and have a bounce back year and be fully 100%.
Yeah, and I think the Broncos are still trying to find ways. Certainly we saw this last year, even the year before. How do you make Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton work together? How do you find a game plan that highlights both of those guys at the same time? Because you'd see last year and throughout Courtland's career, he has stretches where he's really, really good and has a lot of catches, over 100 yards, and you just look for him to stack those games and avoid the games where, maybe he doesn't have as many catches and it's a 3 or 4 catch game for 30, 40, 50 yards. How can you consistently be even in that 50 to 100 range, complement Jerry Jeudy well? I do think, Steve, you talk about that explosiveness. I thought we saw a little bit of it last year toward the end of the year.
Yeah.
That game in Kansas City, he went up and made a great catch. It was called offensive pass interference. Not a good call.
Yeah.
But it showed the Courtland Sutton of old. And as they get this offense rolling here and they look for those deep shots from Russell Wilson, they need somebody who's able to go up and get that 50-50 ball. I think we saw some flashes at the end of the year that Courtland can still be that guy.
Yeah.
In 2019, 6 touchdowns. Obviously, that was his breakout season. Then 2020 gets hurt. The last 2 years, just 2 touchdowns in each of those, Sid. But you think maybe he'll be able to bounce back a new offense here, maybe just a sort of a reset for Courtland Sutton?
Yeah, I think so, Phil. I think it goes back to what both Steve and Eric said. And I think Sean Payton in this offense is going to be really good for him because, like Courtland said, last week during OTAs, Sean is really into the details and, explaining why he's doing what he's doing. And I think that will be really great for Courtland coming back in, third year post-surgery. And, I hope we see that in 2019 Courtland, that Pro Bowl season Courtland that we had then. And
Sean Payton, he's gotten a lot out of some of his wide receivers over the years. A guy like Michael Thomas, Eric, who's similar build. I think he's 6'3", Sutton maybe a 6'4", maybe some similarities there.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly hope so. Courtland Sutton said he recently got some tape from Michael Thomas's 2019 season. That year, Michael Thomas had, I think, 149 catches. I mean, over 1,700 yards. That's not too shabby at all. I don't know how somebody catches that many passes in 1 year. But yeah, I mean, obviously, you don't expect that sort of production, but Courtland said, hey, can I find a thing here or there that I can take from Michael Thomas's game, add to my game? Back-to-back first-team All-Pros for Michael Thomas there. So if he can add some elements there, maybe find out, hey, how does Sean Payton plan on using him? That's only going to help him as we get into training camp in the regular season.
Yeah, and we got to keep in mind that the running game will more than likely be much better than it's been in the past. And that offensive line is going to be dominant, in my opinion. So that's going to open up the passing game just that much more for all of the receivers.
And I think it's great that Courtland also has a new wide receivers coach this year, too, to get a fresh perspective on his game and to, have little details that maybe Courtland hasn't thought of the past couple of years to up his game to the next level, too.
Yeah, all these things, maybe they'll all add up, and we'll see the old Courtland Sutton, the 2019 version of Sutton. Here he is last week talking about the depth in the wide receiver room.
We have a great room, and I think everybody's in there trying to, ultimately, like Coach said, he told us yesterday, you're competing with yourself, and I think all the guys in there are understanding that, even if it may not be here, you're putting on a lot of film for the rest of the teams in the league. So I think it's been good, having those guys in there, and then everybody's in there competing and giving their best.
So with all those guys in that wide receiving room, what would be a successful season, do you think, for Sutton? 5 touchdowns? What do you think, Steve?
Well, I would say more than anything, him knowing the playbook inside and out, and then playing in 14, 15, 16 games, being available for that many games. And I think if he's available, he's going to make the plays.
Yeah, I think one thing that plays to Courtland's favor is that when you look at a Sean Payton-led offense, all his teams in New Orleans, you typically had a couple of guys share all those targets. It's not necessarily always an offense where everybody is going to eat. There are, some of those years you saw one or two guys each have 7, 8, 9 touchdowns, and so I would think Jerry Jeudy is going to be one of those guys. We heard Sean Payton last week say he's going to be a focus of this offense. Well, can Courtland Sutton be the other guy, or can he join a Greg Dulcich in being one of those guys? I do think you could be looking at it somewhere between 800 and 1,000 yards, get over 5 touchdowns. I mean, part of the reason that Courtland hasn't had a lot of touchdowns the last few years is nobody's had a lot.
Yeah,
This team has not scored a lot of points. So if the offense gets better, they score some touchdowns here, there's plenty to go around, and I think you'll see a successful season for Courtland.
I agree. I want to see a 1,000-yard season for Courtland.
1,000? Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Do you think it's hard for him, though? Because even heading into last season, a lot of people thought maybe he was the number 1 wideout. Now I think it's clear that that guy's Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that Courtland feels like he can be that number 1 guy again, and I think he can too. If he's back to the old Courtland, he can be a number 1 type guy, but I don't think he's focused on that right now. I think he's focused on learning this playbook, being healthy, staying healthy, and them winning a bunch of football games.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that kind of stuff. I think that
I
makes
agree.
sense. And also Tim Patrick's coming back into the mix here. So there's a lot of talent in that room. They obviously, with their first pick this year, bring in Marvin Mims Jr. So I think that's going to be one area to pay attention to here when we come back after the break and get the training camp rolling and stuff. That's going to be a big position to pay attention to. So that's going to do it for us. For Eric Delala, Steve Atwater, and Sydney Jones, I am Phil Milani.